Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As today we are on the 10th episode of the second round of the My Favorite LJN tournament. And at the conclusion of this episode, we will be halfway through round 2. And you guys know once we get into round 3, from that point forward, all of these episodes or all these rounds are going to be pretty much smooth sailing. So round 3, you're only looking at about 10 episodes. Round 4, 5 episodes. Round 5, maybe 3 episodes. Maybe I could squeeze it into 2, but realistically, I'm probably going to look at about 3 episodes. Round 6, I'll probably do 1 episode, and I'm going to probably squeeze round 6 into 1 episode, round 7 into 1 episode. That way I could kind of separate the semifinals and finals into one of, they're each individual episode, and I don't have to kind of put them in together, because that's normally what I've done in the past, put semifinals and finals together, but those videos normally hover around 45 minutes, and I feel like maybe I could get a 20-25 minute video out for each, because I feel, especially if you have like a 3-man finals, it's going to be a tough decision. I feel like a 3-man finals I will literally spend 30 to 40 minutes trying to kind of come up with an answer. It's going to be that difficult because these figures are amazing. And with all of the addition of some of the great pieces that I figure can really challenge for the top favorite piece, I don't know. It's going to be really hard to really move away from a figure that's already won 2 of my tournaments, but I might have to, because I kind of feel like there are a lot of freaking figures that I've acquired that have a legitimate chance of replacing my new favorite piece, right? So, but not a whole lot to discuss prior to the tournament today, so we will be able to dive right into today's matchups. So we can go ahead and start drawing the names for today's video. And they will entail number 1, Virgil, who will square off against Nickel and Dime, Nikolai Volkov. Next matchup is going to feature Bruiser Brody I don't want this matchup. I don't want this matchup. Bruiser Brody squares off against Bobby Heenan Elf. I'm going to put it out there right now, guys. Before I even look at these figures, start talking about them. Bobby Heenan Elf is one of those figures that I think can finally eliminate Bruiser Brody. And I think here in the second round, Bruiser Brody might finally meet his match. I'm probably going to spend forever on that matchup. This might be an hour-and-a-half long video. I'm gonna try and be reasonable with my length of this video, but that's gonna be a tough one. All right, this is Coco Red and White. He squares off against Dino Bravo. Oh man, this is such a tough video already. Kamala will square off against Jim Neidhart Custom, and that's just the original Jim Neidhart Custom I own. So, all right, so names drawn. Let me pull the figures, and we will begin shortly. All right, folks. So, first matchup we said was going to be from Random Treasures. Virgil taking on Nickel and Dime, Nikolai Volkov. And we will start with the Nikolai Volkov figure. So in essence, I'm trying to find different things to say with each round, I want to say different things that I haven't already said in previous rounds, but in all honesty, there's not really a whole lot more I can say about the figures that I haven't already said in previous rounds. So, in reality, especially when you're looking at like multiple customs for the same characters, because a lot of time you are going to say pretty much the same thing about a respective figure that you may have said about their original figure. So, if you've got a Roddy Piper original and then you got like 7 Roddy Piper customs, you're probably going to say relatively the same thing with each one. So after a while, yeah, the stories start to become redundant and whatnot. So I remember this look from early 90s, 92, 93, 94. I really don't remember the year exactly, but I remember this look. I had no idea, from as an adult, I had no idea this was Nikolai Volkov. When I started collecting LJNs and I heard the name Nikolai Volkov, I don't even know if I even remember that name. I mean, it's possible. As I've said, I didn't grow up with LJNs, obviously. And I kind of feel LJNs or your favorite toy line, it's like Superman, right? So Superman, or your favorite Superman, is going to be the Superman of your childhood. If you grew up in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, Christopher Reeve is probably going to be your favorite Superman. If you grew up in mid to late 90s, early 2000s, it's very possible that Tom Welling is going to be your favorite Superman. Early 2000s to modern day, Henry Cavill. It's that simple. If you're from the 40s, 50s, 60s, George Reeves is probably going to be your favorite Superman. It's like I said, your favorite Superman is going to be based on who you grew up watching. I will always say that, yeah, probably Christopher Reeve is the greatest Superman of all time, but like my personal favorite will always be Dean Cain because I love Lois and Clark New Adventure Superman. I thought it was a fantastic series, and I thought Dean Cain played an awesome Superman. So even though he was my favorite, I still say Christopher Reeve was the best Superman, plain and simple. So, and I say that because Hasbro's were the figures from my childhood. No, I didn't know they were called Hasbro's. I didn't know they were made by Hasbro, so I didn't learn that until like 2020 or something, right? And when I think about the characters that came out in Hasbro, those are wrestlers I can remember watching when I was young. So when I look at the LJN line, I'm like, okay, there's a good chunk of these characters I did not grow up watching. Yeah, a lot of them transitioned to the 90s, so I'm like, yeah, I'm very familiar with a lot of characters. Was Nikolai Volkov one of those guys? I don't remember. Maybe his name sounded familiar, maybe not. I don't know. But this look, I remember this look because I remember the $1 Million Man absolutely insulting this guy, and it's kind of like wearing a very similar suit to like what the $1 Million Man wore, but instead of having the money sign, right, the dollar sign, you put the cent sign on him. And I don't think I knew nickel and dime. I don't remember that name. But getting this figure in, Nikolai Volkov, my first LJN that I ever owned. So the figure itself meant a lot. Getting this particular look, this particular custom. I don't know if this figure wins by tournament. Does this figure make it to the semifinals? Is this a last 4 or last 5? Because I think there's going to be more than 4 figures in the semifinals. I think there's going to be like 5 figures in the semifinals. So I think it's going to be an odd number. Does he make it to semifinals? It's a very strong possibility. This is a fantastic figure. Virgil, I know a lot of people were not fans of Virgil. Either maybe because they only viewed him as nothing more than a bodyguard of the $1 Million Man, or maybe they just weren't big fans of his wrestling abilities. But I mean, I don't really remember Virgil necessarily as bodyguard. I remember him as sort of like boxer, sort of Virgil. So shorts with candy stripes or long pants with candy stripes. Virgil, that's how I remember Virgil. And when I go back and I watch all these VHS tapes and whatnot, I'm like, and I see this look and I see him outside the ring with $1 Million Man in there during Royal Rumbles or during his matches. I'm like, yeah, that's famous, right? 1989 Royal Rumble, right after Big John Studd threw out $1 Million Man and kind of beat up Virgil at the end. And this look right here, it's like, that's funny. So this look is so awesome. I love that Ram Treasures came out with Virgil. I love that they came out with this particular look. The only downside with this figure is the arm positioning. One of the awesome things that Ram Treasures did was come out with the Rick Rude, because obviously what LJN made up with their Rick Rude was a terrible design with the arms, fused to the side, right? And you took an awesome character, you had this really despicable figure. But you made it a sort of upgraded Rick Rude. I mean, it's not my favorite Rick Rude figure. It's my favorite figure. It's not one of my favorites. But yeah, you can see it a little bit upgrade compared to the original, right? But why would you do this with Virgil? This is a 5 out of 10 figure for me. With the right pose, I feel like this could have been a 10 out of 10. It is a figure I highly recommend only because it's Virgil, because it is a aesthetically fantastic figure. The pose alone is what makes it, gives it that low rating. But, I mean, it is one I would buy 100 times out of 100. Pose or not. Pose sucks the way it does or not. Like I said, with the right pose, pretty much think about any pose, any playable pose, even if it's just one arm down, like I don't know, what's a really bad pose? Even if you took Jesse Ventura, maybe not that, right? But something like, how about a Corporal Kirchner? Arm is in and very, very tight, right? But that's something. That right there would, even something very small and simple like that, would have been spectacular. Would that have been enough to defeat Nikolai Volkov? It would not. But it still would have been something special. I really enjoy the Virgil figure, even with the terrible play pose. But Nickel and Dime, like I said, he is very deserving of a round 3 advancement. What Mark was able to do with this figure was incredible. And I always thought that he had, painted this stuff. But you look at it, it's actually stencils on here. Or maybe stickers. Which is fine. I mean, the way that he's able to, paint around it so that it all bleeds in beautifully. And you know what? It makes it better in essence, because at least the lettering and everything is crisp and it's straight. It's so you're not sitting there and handwriting everything, so that it's potentially off center and whatnot. So, like I said, the way that he paints around it bleeds in beautifully. It's a perfect figure in my opinion. So, does Nikolai Volkov make it as a semifinalist? This is one of those figures I would hope so. I mean, can he be a winner? You remember that little bracket I talked about, right? One can beat 2, but one can always beat 2, but always loses to 3. But 3 always beats 1, but always loses to 2 type of deal, right? So if you kind of look at that, who's to say if that happens with the right matchups that this couldn't make an advance to the finals? I know I just confused the heck out of a lot of people, and that almost confused me, but but I kind of understood where I was saying, because I was the one saying it. Next matchup, and this is the one that I despise. I don't like these type of matchups. If these were round 4, round 5 matchups, they're fine. But when they're happening in the first round, second round, even third round, this sucks. So this is probably going to be the highlight of the second round altogether. The good thing about this right here, these are literally both tournament winners. Bruiser Brody, I have made 2 previous my favorite LJN tournaments, and Bruiser Brody has won both of those tournaments. I have coveted this figure so much. In the second tournament, this figure, man, in the second tournament, not one single battle did he go up against a figure that was what I would classify less than elite. Literally every single matchup he had in all 6 rounds, 7 rounds, when you consider the finals, right, were against some of the greatest LJN figures ever made. So that second tournament was an absolute deserving victory for this figure. I don't think I had this figure. I'm about 99.9% sure I did not have this figure during the second tournament. I think this is, I don't know. Actually, I don't know where I got this. I thought I got this from off Mercari, and I probably got it off Mercari, but I don't think this was a Harvey Snuts purchase. It might have been, but I don't think so. But when I did the My Favorite Manager tournament, this was my tournament winner. In all honesty, I thought one of the referees would have won, because in the manager tournament, the referees, the legitimate managers like Fuji and Blassie and Heenan and Hart, etc., and executives like Jack Tunney, like Vince McMahon, your special guests like Donald Trump, for example, your other analysts like Lord Alfred Hayes, and in-ring guys like Howard Finkel, all those type of guys, they all participated in the My Favorite Manager tournament. So this was my winner of the manager tournament, and there were top 3 choices. I figured if it wasn't going to be the referee, it was probably going to be maybe Freddie Blassie, and Bobby Heenan would probably put him number 3. Which version of Bobby Heenan, I didn't know, but Bobby Heenan, again, he was a tournament winner. Maybe not the My Favorite LJN tournament winner, but so when I say that this figure was probably going to be on my list of top 10 selections, if I had to choose 10 figures that I felt like had a legitimate chance of beating Bruiser Brody, this Bobby Heenan figure, absolutely. He's already won a tournament, so he has credibility. Bobby Heenan, he's like right with Ric Flair. Guys that you absolutely despised as a freaking kid, but as an adult, you freaking learned to absolutely love them for what they were. And I kind of like, where Ric Flair, I as an adult, I appreciate his career, but with Bobby Heenan, I kind of respect him more as an adult. I actually like Bobby Heenan more now as an adult. With Ric Flair, not so much. Ric Flair, I'm still indifferent. Like, I respect his career and his accomplishments and all of his titles and what he meant to wrestling and everything, but I'm still indifferent to Ric Flair. But Bobby Heenan, his action figure is absolutely amazing, right? His custom is out of this world, insanely good. Now, when you kind of mesh wrestling with holiday themed, I think that's sensational. Whether you're taking Halloween theme or you're taking Christmas theme, I love that. That is so freaking good. When the customizer, when I was thinking about this, you put this in like all green, that probably would have been like more elf like, or you put this in all red, maybe you could have had yourself like a real Christmas Santa Claus Bobby Heenan figure, but he's too small, too thin, so But then again, I like the dual colors. So, do you take the all green? Or do you leave it mixed colors? It's kind of a toss-up. I respect Bobby Heenan. I actually really love Bobby Heenan. I thought he was a fantastic guy on the mic. I hated him as a manager. I thought he was despicable. But him on, I always say that among my top 4 favorite guys commentating, obviously I always put like Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler up there. But probably Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan as my top 4 greatest commentators. So, the aesthetics of the figure, insanely good. Now, he does have sort of like a built-on accessory, right? Name recognition, check. Fighting pose, not just one, but 2 hands, check. Theme, okay. Normally there's not really a theme, but I'll throw that in as like an added bonus. Color scheme, check. There's just so much I love about this figure. Bruiser freaking Brody. So I will probably start talking about this. I don't know if Bruiser Brody wins this matchup, and I'm just being fair now. Yes, he's won my first 2 tournaments, but at some point, I do feel like this my favorite LJN tournament is going to be something that I do on a consistent basis. I've talked about maybe this potentially being the last time I do this tournament, but I enjoy making these tournaments. Now, I've said if I continue doing this in the future, it's not going to be with all of my figures again, not like this again. It's probably going to be I'm going to cut it down to like maybe 100 something, like 128 figures, as opposed to the 320 figures I've just done in this tournament. But I'm only going to include any new acquisitions that I acquire in the future that aren't a part of this current one, and B, figures that absolutely are insanely good. So I'm going to look at the originals, I'm going to look at customs that absolutely deserve to be talked about. So one of the things I want to talk about right now that I'm probably, if this figure does win this matchup, I'm probably going to be talking about any future matchup that I discuss with this figure. One of the things that I am starting to lose value or respect about this particular figure is that you're seeing all of these customizers nowadays. They're taking an actual Greg Valentine figure. They are putting a freaking Hillbilly Jim head on it. They are putting some dots on the chest, maybe some blood or something, right? And calling it Bruiser Brody. So they are basically making a poor man's Bruiser Brody figure, and it's devaluing what I have here. When I bought this figure, I've said before, at one point, this was the most expensive figure I ever purchased. The most expensive toy, collectible, whatever you want to call it, that I ever purchased. When I was in Iraq in 2022, I paid $250 on eBay for this. Given it came from Eric, and if it wasn't Wrestling Writer, I wouldn't have bought it from, I wouldn't have paid that type of money. I would probably put in an offer or something, but because it was him, yeah, I paid up for it. And sometimes when you're friends with somebody or you respect somebody, you're willing to pay more because of the seller. But the Bruiser Brody figure, even though I didn't know anything about him at the time, Eric, he used to put in his description on eBay, kind of like a history of the character and whatnot, and I used to like that a lot. I used to like reading about Abdullah the Butcher and Bruiser Brody and their their history and stuff like that, and that meant a lot. So the head mold was really freaking good. I always enjoyed the hair, right? The belt-on vest, and it's very similar to Greg Valentine. I don't know if they actually did take an actual Greg Valentine figure, but the play pose and everything, which was basically Greg Valentine-esque. And they're not putting a freaking hillbilly Jim head. It's a legitimate Zashman variant. Or this may have actually come from Tom Veg, because Tom Veg does a lot of the heads, right? And I think Eric told me that this was a prototype from Zashman, so owning that as well meant a whole lot. Now, when you go to like Australia or look at Zashman, look at it like Australia, they actually have this figure on actual WWF LJN Superstars blue card, mint on card figures, and I'm like, I need to get that. They're not, and they weren't really like crazy expensive. They were like $250 or something, and I'm like, damn, $250 for a mint on card. I pay $250 loose. Hold on a minute, something's not adding up here. Nah, but I might do that one day. Who knows? But accessory, play pose, aesthetics, one of my favorite pairs of boots of all the collections. Making this tournament, when I decided to make this tournament again, I said one of the hardest things that was gonna happen in this tournament was I could value another figure, and I'm like, you know what, this figure that I have here I might actually love this figure so much more than this one. But because this one has always won, the hardest part for me was choosing another figure over this Bruiser Brody. Would I be strong enough basically to finally put this figure down and put somebody else up as winner? And holding this, I don't know if I could do it. This is a freaking awesome piece. This is a figure I think can actually win this matchup. And I don't see a lot of Bobby Heenan figures like this, right? And like I said, I kind of feel like this figure is starting to become devalued because of all of the, I don't want to call them sham, but all of the fake Bruiser Brody figures that people are starting to kind of create to try to emulate this. I don't know if you would call this one of a kind, because it's not really one of a kind, because there are other variants that look exactly like this, right? You can find them, but then you get the little fake knockoffs with the Hillbilly Jim and Greg Valentine, and I look at that and I'm like, it's kind of ruining this figure for me. I still can't do it. Bruiser Brody is moving on to round 3. I seriously thought this was going to be somewhere towards the end, and eliminated in the second round hurts a lot. And what I just said about seeing him win 2 tournaments, what happens when he comes up against a figure that 100% deserves to win this tournament? Let's say he's in the 5th round, 6th round. He's in the 7th round, and it's the finals, and he's going up against a figure that deserves to win this tournament. But I just can't put the other figure over because I'm so used to having him win. That is so unfair to the other figure. It's like today when I still classify Big John Studd as my favorite LJN, when technically I could probably say that Big John Studd is maybe my 5th favorite LJN, realistically. But I still say he's number 1. But I say Hogan is like my number 2 favorite again, he could be like number 8. When you actually boil it down to all the different details. So, but there's no doubt, this is still one of the greatest LJNs, not just even of my collection, but of any collection out there. This is a fantastic piece. So, next matchup, we were gonna see from the Raider Nation, Coco Beware taking on Ram Treasure's Dino Bravo. And we'll look at Dino Bravo. So, oh man, this like I said, all of these round 2 videos are so freaking hard. And if they're this hard in round 2, imagine how impossible they're going to be in round 3. And by the time we get to round 4, every freaking video is going to be like an hour and 10 minutes long, because I'm going to have no idea how to choose. Random Treasures may have created a almost perfect or beyond perfect figure. The only downside with Dino Bravo is arm positioning. It is almost Haku-like, and you guys know, when you look at like the Islander Haku from original LJN, waist down, the pants are great. I love the design of the pants. They look spectacular. But then you look at the arm positioning, and Haku is an absolute horrid LJN figure. Top 10 worst LJN figure ever made. Easy. Dino Bravo is an absolutely spectacular figure from Ram Treasures. And because he's such a big buff guy, and he has this nice, thick, strong rubber, I mean, this is perfect rubber. If every single one of Ram Treasures figure had this sort of thickness to the rubber, they would all be perfect figures. Or at least, rubber-wise, they'd be all perfect. They'd be actually splendid. The positioning of the arms, I can't stress that enough. But everything else, design, all right? When you look at the details that went into making this figure, it is absolutely insanely good. What was Dino Bravo? Was he called the Canadian Strongman, right? Could bench like 600 pounds. I mean, I would say that's not realistic, but people bench press 600 pounds. Hell, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger could probably bench press 600 pounds nowadays, and he's like 80 years old. I remember being in Iraq back in like 2008, 2009, and I was in a friend's room and we were watching, what was it, Hercules in New York, I think it was called. And the movie came out in like 1969. And I thought that was like a typo or something. There was like, because Hercules, because Arnold Schwarzenegger had to be at least 20 years old in that movie. And 1969, I'm like, there's no way. He was born in the 40s. But then you actually look it up, sure enough, Arnold Schwarzenegger was born in 1949. So yeah, he was 20 years old in 1969 when that movie came out. There's a scene that's so freaking stupid. He's in like Central Park or something, and there's this guy dressed up in a parachute. The freaking bear is over there like... so stupid. You want to talk about the cheesiest... I don't mind cheesy sci-fi movies or something, but I don't know what the heck that is. That's not a sci-fi movie, man. That's... But I'm like, wow. Oh, what was it? The commercial that kind of does the same thing where the guy's like on a cliff or something, surrounded by water, and then the bear kind of fighting him the same way. Was it like a beef jerky commercial or something? It's so lame. I mean, it's funny, but it's stupid funny. Raider Nation, they have the Coco Beware figure, which Coco Beware, I am not a fan of Coco Beware. I don't know if I necessarily cared about him as a kid. And as an adult, it's like the Bushwhackers. I love the Bushwhackers when I was young, but when I watch the Bushwhackers as an adult, like I feel like, man, these guys suck. Now, maybe if I watch the Bushwhackers wrestle in like other territories, I'll and actually see them like legitimately wrestle to their actual skill set, I would feel differently. But like when I view them based in the subdued WWF, and they're just not good. And so when I view Coco Beware, I kind of see the same thing. I'm like, this man is not a superstar. And how does this man get every single one of the coolest figures ever made? LJN, Hasbro, Jakks Pacific. I mean, you name it, this man, his action figures just rock. I mean, his LJN, his body pose might suck, but you know, you also got to realize you're throwing on the accessory, right? So you think about the 2x4 for Jim Duggan, right? So the way that the arm's positioning, you got to realize that, hey, the 2x4's got to be positioned on his shoulder and whatnot. So, but the color scheme, right? The repaint, the design that went into, and this was not an expensive figure. I think I paid like $60 for this figure, $67, $70, something like that for this figure. And Coco Beware original, even with paint loss, you're at least, you know, back in like 2022, you were looking at a good $70 for an original figure with paint loss. So $100+ again back in 2022 for an original figure, $90. So getting a really awesome paint job like this for around $70 on eBay, I thought was a steal of a price. Nowadays, you know, you get a pretty good condition Coco Beware on auction, or buy it now, you might get one for about 40, $50. So, you know, prices obviously they fluctuate, but this is absolutely fantastic. This is obviously one of my absolute favorite pieces, not just from the Raider Nation, but overall. Do I say it's like one of my top 10 favorite from my entire collection? Maybe not, but still incredible. I think I've seen more of Coco Beware growing up than I did Dino Bravo. Do I like the pose? Neither one has really exceptional play pose. I can at least say Coco Beware has more color to it. I'm going to go with Coco Beware. I think Coco normally does really well in these tournaments. He usually makes it really far, 3, 4, 5 rounds. So, I mean, does that make a difference? No, I know Dino Bravo would probably go multiple rounds, probably another 2 rounds at least, probably to the 4th round. But he's not a tournament winner. So, I would feel comfortable eliminating him here. It's not a big deal for me at this point. Last matchup is going to feature Kamala as he goes up against Jim Neidhart Custom. Yes, I got a ton of Jim Neidhart Customs, but with all the other customs, they're broken down by description. Now, this was probably the first Jim Neidhart Custom I ever got, so... And at one point, yeah, I probably would have said that my Bret Hart from Wrestling Writer and this custom right here probably would have been like in my finals. If you had asked me before I ever did my very first tournament, those were the 2 figures I thought was going to end up in the finals. And I think they probably made it to like round 4, round 5. So Kamala, I've decided to go off of I pulled this off my main display. So in the first round, I pulled one of the duplicates, and with all the paint loss and everything on that figure, I'm like, look, colors, designs, graphics, it really helps you make a decision, because when you're seeing all paint loss and everything, you're not seeing those colors, you're not seeing those graphics, so it really hurts make your decision and whatnot. So when you have the full design, yeah, it helps a whole lot. When I've looked at guys like when I looked at guys like Stud and Kamala, Hogan and Andre, grip of the figures is always sensational. The poses are always very similar. The bent legs, knees, incredible. One of the things I got to do is I got to take probably a Nikolai Volkov, most likely. I don't know if I sent it already or it's in one of my boxes. I think it's in one of the boxes I have right now, but I have a Mountie Hasbro figure that I'm going to end up sending to my buddy Rob Jackson, and I'm going to get that Mountie customized to look like Kimchi. And later on, I'm probably going to take one of the Nikolai Volkov customs, or Nikolai Volkov figures, LJNs, and probably get that customized to look like Kimchi. I think I've seen someone use Freddie Blassie. Maybe that one would be a better selection. I don't know. Maybe Freddie Blassie would work better. But I want something to put aside next to Kamala. But man, freaking what was that Harvey dude? Damn, drawing a blank now. Harvey Whippleman. But when Harvey Whippleman and Kimchi kind of turned on Kamala, and then the Reverend Slick kind of took him under his wing, and Kamala became a good guy. I don't know, man. Kamala just seems like he's one of those cats that does better as a bad guy, but guys like Mr. Perfect, Macho Man, there's even Shawn Michaels, there's certain characters that you just feel like make better bad guys, but you love to root for them. So when they're good guys, you're glad they're good guys because you want to be a fan of those particular characters. But when I talked about wanting to resituate my top 10 favorite LJNs, right? And I said Kamala was like my number 4 favorite. This is one of those figures that could be number 1 potentially. It is an awesome piece. I'm kind of going back and forth because both Kamala and Jim Neidhart are in my top 10 of all-time favorite LJN figures. And with the upgraded design of this figure, right? Jim Neidhart, this custom figure is much more impressive than his original LJN design. And I like this one better than any of the other custom Jim Neidhart figures that I do own. Even more so than that Jim Neidhart that I got from Wrestling Writer with the Bret Hart Hasbro design, Series 8 design. So we're already at 43 minutes, guys, and I can't really. Oh man, would be such a fun match. I'm not gonna take long because at 43 minutes, I don't want this to take super long. I'm gonna go with Kamala, guys. I said that this was probably gonna be like an hour and a half video because I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that because I was gonna spend a lot of time on that Bruiser Brody matchup, but I'm going with Kamala. I think I had a pretty good idea I was gonna choose Kamala when I first pulled the names. I could say, well, you know what, I got plenty of Jim Neidharts left over in this tournament, but I think Kamala is pretty much going to wipe through any of these Jim Neidhart figures. Not only do I rate Jim Neidhart around number 8, Kamala at number 4, but play, pose, fighting, weight, size. I enjoy Kamala as a character more than Jim Neidhart. Kamala is always at the end of my tournaments. Always. Is he going to be at the end of this tournament? There are several figures that I've added to this tournament that weren't a part of my last 2 tournaments that it's going to be really hard to say that he makes it to the finals or semifinals again. And that is sad because this is one of my all-time favorite pieces. But we're going to have to see what happens in this tournament. But that does conclude round 2, part 10, and some heartbreakers. Guys, as always, man, I do appreciate you watching the video, and I really wish I could do better than 45 minutes, but it is what it is, sadly. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll talk to you in the comments, and see you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.